the hour. Call to order, approval of the minutes. Any questions? I have a motion to approve from Adam, second from Gabrielle. Any questions, comments? Otherwise, let's do a roll call.
All right. Bill Sennel.
Yes.
Adam Fisher.
Yes.
Paul Kapla.
Yes.
Mike O'Reilly.
Yes.
Ken Bargander.
Present.
Lyle Lang.
Yes.
And Gabrielle Polke.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Any potential conflicts of interest today? All right. Citizen comments. Any comments? All right.
This goes on, and this is good? Okay. Lois T. Street, 815 East 19th Street, also mayor. I want to commend you. I've been here 6 months. I've only missed one meeting, and I'm very happy to be here with you representing the city. EDB was the biggest thing that I was in. Favor is not the right word, but the biggest thing that I was concerned about, and you've all made my concern much, much brighter and happier. So thank you, and keep up the great work, everyone.
Well, thank you. Anybody else? All right. Discussion of the city housing needs and opportunities.
I'll start, and then I'd like to have Ashley Frederick step up here and join us as well, make some comments about what she's seeing in the market. But you guys had a great discussion last month on September 1st, looking at the minutes again, reminded me of some of the good comments that were made and how we need to look at housing kind of holistically. And we talk a lot about the development of single-family lots, and that's very important, but there's some other things we need to be aware of too, other types of housing needs and issues out there for various demographics. Anyway, we have an executive team here at City Hall of staff members that we meet every other week, and we talk about some of the issues. And we've been talking since the vote on that the one housing development at 21st and Washington about what to do next. At our last meeting, we kind of identified the thought that it would be good maybe to get the EDB and the council together for a joint meeting to talk about this. EDB's really been wanting to push forward with housing. I think council wants to see some new housing as well. They may be on the same page on some things, not on other things, but we haven't had a joint meeting of the EDB and the council ever. And I think the intent was, once upon a time, these bodies would meet jointly anyway. We could have another item on the agenda if you'd like, since we don't meet that often, but I think housing itself would probably be a significant discussion. And where do we take that? I mean, the EDB is seeing that housing can hinder, the lack of housing can hinder growth and development in all sectors. And I think the council wants to see more tax base and more opportunities for citizens to find the residences they want. So my proposal out of these comments is that we see whether or not the EDB is interested in trying to schedule a joint meeting with the council, largely focused on residential development, and again, open to maybe adding another item if possible. But I don't want to shortchange housing. That may be the bulk of any conversation. Thoughts?
Questions?
Would you like to hear from Ashley first before we have discussion on the whole area?
Well,
I mean, she can tell you what she's seeing in the market.
I would be very interested in hearing Ashley's comments, yes.
Hello. I'm going to save the Daniel's edition part, I think, until we get to that, if that sounds good. As far as just kind of a current update, we're still kind of holding true to where we've been all summer. So at the 15 houses that are currently available, that's 0, up to 400. So if you look over 400, there are 3 houses for sale. 2 of them are the 2 spec homes in the Daniels edition, and then the $1.5 million home. So above 400, there's 3. And it just kind of goes through, you know, really the under 200, there's not much for sale. It's kind of the 250 to 300 is kind of where there's about 6 houses for sale, which is still not a lot when you're looking at bringing people to town. There's a lot of talk, you know, across news sources that the market's crashing, et cetera. I think, you know, Jenny's here as well, and I think we can attest to that's not currently the case. We still have a huge demand for people looking to relocate, but we just keep on coming back to the same issue of not availability. The interest rates have, increased. There's, Bill can talk to that. There's potential that they will increase again yet this year, which will hold off some buyers that had originally made plans to purchase. There are other options as far as adjustable rate mortgages, which a lot of clients are doing so that they can still purchase. So I would say we're not in the frenzy that we were last year as far as people willing to pay so much more over asking, but we're still in the situation that we're ending up with multiple offers on properties. They're still going slightly over, but we're still active. Things are still moving quickly. So I don't think we should think that there's a crash that's about to happen.
Is there any move up motion? Are people trading up and creating any availability on the lower end?
No, because there's only the 2 houses above 400 that are for sale.
So really, it's all the houses that are being bought by pretty much people coming in from outside the city.
There's the move up range if you were to look at from like maybe somebody that's in the low 100s into the 200 mark. There's definitely that movement happening. But like if you look at, I think it's 250 to 300, there's 1 house for sale, which is a really popular price point under 300, and we have 1 house for sale. Above like the 3 to 350, there's 2, 350 to 4, there's none. So we're still having the issue of not being able to open the middle market because there's not adequate 250 and above for sale.
So there's very little construction being done, and new construction is at what price point primarily?
It's different per builder, but the 2 spec homes, one's listed at $479, the other one's listed at $505. I can talk about it when we talk about Daniel's Addition, but Swiderski will have 2 coming on that'll be in the $4 to $475 range. She's not sure if it's going to be fall or spring, but that's their plan. We can talk about that a little bit more, but otherwise, besides that, there's not any other new construction option. Just the 2 there above 400.
So on the banking side, yeah, interest rates are up over 6%, well over 6% these days for a 30-year fixed. Our construction volume is way down. There was quite a bit before, but we're not seeing the volume of construction across all of our markets that we were seeing even 6 months ago. Part of that is time of the year. So
yeah, and I think some of that too is, builders are pretty packed up anyway. So if you call them, most a lot of builders will tell you that they're out a year and a half as far as what they have on the books. So then having the ability of somebody that wants to do something now can throw that off slightly too.
So a lot of availability other than Daniel's subdivision, not really that much going on, or?
Do you want me to talk about that now? Or you want me to talk about that in the later?
Well, let's talk about it now.
Okay.
As long as we're on that subject.
Sure. So I kind of want to reference it. I know that people think that it's moving slow, but I just want to remind everyone that we have sold 14 lots, which I think in itself is a feat to sell 14 lots, which means that those are 14 people that do plan to sell. So Steve, I don't know if you want to. So this can kind of just, I know a lot of you haven't been up there. So if you haven't made your way, I stopped there this morning. This is a custom build. I also want to remind people too that this one is actually on a slab, which if you recall, there was a fair amount of debate whether a slab should be entertained or not. But I think this goes to show that it can still look like a very nice home. So these should probably be, I think they'll probably be moving in the next probably 60 days or so. And then the next one is just another side angle of that same property. So, high-end quality as far as the siding, all the things are done. Obviously, the lawn looks nice and manicured, so that helps when people are driving by as well. And then just in the background, you can see the beginning of a new home, which is also a custom build. So, Steve, the next slide, I think, is just... So that just walls started to go up last week. So I would say if you were to drive down there tonight, they probably have more of the rafters on. And then the last 2, I think, one more. So this is one of the Green Tree homes. So this one is currently listed at $505, and it's a 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath. And as far as the interior completions, they're probably maybe like 85% finished inside. So bathrooms, et cetera, haven't quite been finished. obviously the lawn isn't finished, but the driveway's in, all the exterior things are in. And then the next one, this is the other green tree, and this is 479, I believe. And also a 3-bedroom. This one actually does have like the lower level finished as far as a family room. There's room for a bathroom and another bedroom in that basement. So, you gonna say something? Yeah.
Just on your best guess, and I'm sorry to say this to you, you can feel free to not answer, but when we hear like 505 and 479, and people look at the home, I guess the question is, would you expect, I mean, are those selling prices likely to be realized or not? Because that would show how much things have escalated.
Mhm.
Are you asking if I think those values are there?
Yeah, I think that, sorry, if you think that what is being marketed at right now, I mean, all things considered, when they're finished inside, completely, but is that an asking price that's likely to be realized? Because that'll help us frame some of what we consider to be home prices going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing to consider is they've been on the market for 60 days, which is, as oddly as it sounds, is a long time on the market today. So that might show that that price maybe isn't what people are interested in, or if they aren't maybe seeing the value for what's there. I think that, there's just been some discussions as far as what people maybe thought were going to be built in that subdivision and what is currently being built. I mean, there's still obviously new homes. I think it's a matter of potentially finishes, like compared to the first one that was shown, it's a little bit different as far as finishes. I do know that, like I said, so then Swiderski, they, I think they were looking to go the proposed construction route, which they may still do, according to Jackie that I talked to this morning. So they'll have basically 4 plans that they're gonna list. And then of the 4 plans, there will be things that you cannot change and things you can change. So that will be, I mean, she sent a floor plan today of their 2-story. I mean, it's a beautiful home. It looks very nice from what I can tell. And then that will fall, I believe, under that 500 range. So depending on how those finishes stack up to others, I think it'll make a deterrent as far as how other things pan out. So there is, I mean, I think, in the big picture, we have to remember, just because someone buys a lot doesn't mean that they start building the next day. There's a process. The builders would have already had homes already in the works. There's still delays in materials as far as, people aren't on track for what they had planned to be. But I think that having 4 homes in the first year is not a bad place to be in by any means. And talking to some of the other, Swiderski, Russ, et cetera, I mean, they all have plans for early spring. So I think that it's a matter of if you build it, they'll come too. So I think people have to see it come to realization to appreciate it a little bit more.
Question? Yes.
Thanks, Bill. You mentioned earlier, and I know you've mentioned this many times, the lack of homes. Now, when you say lack of homes, are you talking just within the city limits of Marshfield, or are you talking about the surrounding townships?
So I typically only do the city limits.
Okay, so
it's not a lot different outside of the
it's
city
not
limits.
really a lot different, like out in the town of Lincoln, where there is more development, and in the town of McMillan.
Yeah, I mean, so the town of McMillan, all the development that's going on there are all custom builds. So none of them are for sale.
Okay.
As far as the development.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, if you were to go right town of Rock, town of McMillan, town of Marshfield, et cetera, there isn't any construction that's going on that's not a custom build. So there's not spec homes going up in those areas.
Okay, thank you.
So there's still a lot of people moving to town? that
Well,
you're
they're
seeing?
trying to.
Trying to move to town? Is it pretty much a steady stream? Is industry in the area is attracting people, but they're just not finding a place to live?
Yeah, I mean, I still think we have people that have opted to go to other cities if their employer allows them to commute, if they're not on call, or if they have to be within so much of their employer. There's still people that are looking there. But, if we talk about outside of, new construction and we talk about other housing needs, there's still a huge increase for furnished living, so furnished apartments of sorts. I have people that have reached out that are actually working in Wausau and can't find anything there either as far as furnished living that accounts for like a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. So they're willing to commute from Marshfield to Wausau, but we don't have that available for them either. So there is still a fairly large need of short-term housing, which is basically the 13-week contract.
Go ahead.
So this, I don't know if this is something that you can answer, but I thought I would ask it anyway. Can you guys say with certainty, like the last few years, that the most demand has been within a certain range?
Like a range of a price point?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that that's a little tough as far as you don't always know when people are looking because, we don't know unless they do something. But I mean, I think Jenny could probably agree. There's been a larger increase than in the past from the 350 to 500. We didn't see that the same, say, even 3-4 years ago as we have in the last really 2 years. So you have to remember too, like the cost of living is very different. The cost to build a home is very different. What you could build a home for 2.5 years ago, you would never be able to touch that cost today. So that's also shifted people up to maybe higher than what they could. I think there's also a misnomer of how people can get homes. So people keep on thinking you have to have 20% down to get a $400,000 or any home, and you don't have to. I mean, it's the lender requirements, but there's still plenty of loan options that someone could buy a $450,000 house with 0% down or 5% down. So there is a misnomer that you have to have 20% down, and that's why people think young people can't afford a larger home or whatever. That might not actually be the case.
So really on the low end of the scale, there hasn't been anything for a while. So somebody coming into the community, for example, with looking for a lower end salary, they're really going to struggle.
Yeah, so there's nothing for sale under 100,000. There's 3 houses for sale under 150, and there's 3 houses for sale under 200.
Okay, so do you get involved in the rental market at all?
Sort of.
Some
Yeah.
Okay, so the rental market, is it pretty
It's steady.
frothy or?
Well, it's because they can't find housing, so they choose to go to the rentals instead if they
Okay.
have committed to jobs here.
Okay. So low-end rentals, not
Not desirable.
not something you would let other people live in? Is that what?
Some of them are questionable once we've gone and seen them. You have safety hazard concerns for sure.
Yes.
But I think people that are coming here, when you look at, say, a low-end rental, which might be, $450 or something, it hasn't been updated, probably is in greater need of repair, and that's not necessarily what someone is looking for. They are looking for more of a, condo townhouse type situation, if it's a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, or 3-bedroom, 3-bath, as far as if they're going to do a longer lease, right? So say somebody's moving to town, they can't find a house to buy, they've decided instead to rent. But in the same sense, if you have a family coming back, a lot of our rentals are 2-bedroom, 2-baths, and that doesn't work for a family with 3 kids.
So in the end, I think where I was leading you with these questions is along the way is it is not affordable housing is not part of the environment right now.
Oh.
There's lots of questions that we've had along the way about affordable housing and the availability for people to move into the community into affordable housing, meaning pretty much I would probably put that in the under 1,000 range, is very limited from what we're seeing.
Correct.
So,
Yes.
so in order to develop workforce in the area, we need housing.
Yes.
And
And anyway, it's not just, and I think there's a misnomer that if I say housing, somebody just assumes I mean like a $400,000 house. It's not necessarily the case. We need housing, whether it's newer homes that need to be remodeled, rentals, etc. Housing in some fashion.
So any housing is good because it creates spots.
Correct.
And
spots to hang out until something might come available.
Demand at all levels.
Correct.
So, okay. That's kind of what I wanted to get across. Go ahead.
This isn't a question, I guess it's more of a comment. totally agree. We need all types of housing. I think we need to be careful where we are placing some houses. So I think when we do these type of projects and have subdivisions, when you have, well, I'll just use the images we have here. I mean, it's a nice looking house, but it's very different from the very first picture you showed us. So I think we also need to be mindful of when we are doing these developments, what kind of housing do we want in the development? Do you want them to all be the more higher end? Do you want it to be a mixture? I think those are things we need to discuss moving forward, especially if the city continues to do these type of projects, is what is our expectation and what kind of house do we want in these type of subdivisions?
Other comments, questions, concerns, ideas? What do you want to, Gabrielle?
I think that this kind of leads me into the question of like what the progress is on the 2nd Street corridor, because that is potentially a really good opportunity to create some sort of housing. So I think that kind of leads me into like wondering what's going on with that for the update today.
So I'm with you 100%. That's the next item on the agenda here. So the question I would have is do we have other comments or questions in this area? Anybody else? Go ahead.
Well, I want to address what you mentioned, Steve, earlier about the joint meeting. I do think having a joint meeting is a good idea. Since my time on the council, I don't recall ever having a meeting together, and I don't know when or it sounds like there was one at some point, but I don't. It's probably been a long time. So I think it's needed. I think the council and the EDB moving forward, if we can, and I'm not going to say we're not on the same page, but I think if we can get on a more clear page of what the vision is, especially for housing, I think that would be good. I also think having some type of discussion or even update on the 2nd Street would be a good idea to bring that to that meeting. Thank you.
I would agree, and I think going forward, the EDB and the council should meet annually. I mean, there's no reason to look at the value that would bring and look at the work that they both do, generally independently. Now, we have 2 members of the council that sit on the EDB, but still, the broader connection. And I think the 2nd Street corridor kind of ties, as we're going to talk about in a minute, to housing. It's more than just housing, but it certainly connects with that. So there's interest in trying to do this, a joint meeting?
I would say yes. From my perspective, the last one, we have had one in the past, and I thought it was very informative along the way. I think some of the council members are a little disconnected from what efforts we're trying to get done and why we're trying to do them. And this is one area in particular. The housing area needs lots of support from the city along the way. So if we're going to improve the situation. So. All right. Well, that being said, then we can move on to
I'll just keep standing here if it's okay. Yeah. Second Street corridor, there's a lot of interest, and I think I'm not surprised it came up in a comment early in this meeting. Since your last meeting on September 1st, we've had meetings on 3 different potential developments that could involve, at least in part, the 2nd Street corridor area west of Chestnut, and residential's been part of that. So. We're trying to frame this. I have been working, as I mentioned at the last meeting we had, I wanted to see your consensus and you gave it to me to get a group together. And I finally got them assembled. It took a little while, but I'd like one more representative from the EDB. Bill, you've agreed to me on that. I'd like one more from this body to join 2 elected officials, the mayor and the council president, 2 members of CDA have signed on now, representatives from Mackey, Main Street, Plan Commission, and Stephen Wiley, our city planner. And trying to get a date the first time didn't work out perfectly, but we'll get it done. And what I want to do again is to walk through the plan a little bit with people, the highlights, and then start talking about where we can start trying to attack it from a staging standpoint, what we need, what resources we need. I think I covered this last time, between consulting help, TIF district creation, whatever. And I think housing will be an interesting one because I think housing is an opportunity in that district. Some of it's multifamily and some of it maybe isn't multifamily, but we just need to get that off the ground. So if I get one more EDB member, I'll be all set to roll.
We have a volunteer. I can see you. You
Yes.
are volunteering, aren't you? Oh, there you go.
Okay.
We have
Thank you,
our
Gabrielle.
second.
So then I'll just get cranking on trying to get that rescheduled. I'll float out some dates.
Good. Yeah. I'm-
That's all I've got on the topic. I know maybe more we want to talk about at this point, but that's what I've got as an update from 4 weeks ago or whatever it was.
The Second Street plan that they presented to us had over 200 units of housing involved in it.
Yeah. In fact, residential is probably one of the chief components of what we can hope to have happen there. And I'm continuing to play a little phone tag with somebody from Weinbrenner trying to update. So by the time we meet, I'll definitely have an update from them on their plans. And hopefully we'll have a good session on where to take this.
Okay, so the general concept is an overall thrust of moving it forward. Is that?
Yeah. I mean, there's going to be a lot of questions about, public involvement in terms of improvements that are needed. We talked about a TIF district, but right now, what does that mean? What would there be financing for? But I think, Vandewall's made it clear they'd like to help us if we'd like to engage them again. Ellers, our financial advisor, has made it very clear they would work with us on the creation of a TIF district to make some improvements and some incentives possible. I mean, the resources are there for us. We just need to start working on what the implementation plan would look like. If you recall, I said before that Vandewall wanted to be there right from the start to do this. And I felt it was wise for us to meet first before we engage a consultant and say, okay, hold off a second. We want to have some idea, having debriefed on the plan a little bit, what we see, where do we see implementation going? And then we'd love to bring you on board if possible to help guide us through with the technical part of what you do, the part that we don't really normally deal with or understand. Any questions?
Other question? All right.
It's an exciting possibility. I look forward to seeing it start to begin taking hold. But believe me, like I said, we've had 3 meetings in the last month. People are interested in doing stuff. There is a buzz out there for doing stuff in that part of the downtown.
You might as well stay up there, because I think the next item on the agenda is you also appointment of new member. The appointment of new member for the, yeah.
Gordon Edwards has left. He's moved on, left his position at the clinic. And talking with the mayor, we're putting forth Pat Board. He's the Chief Administrative Officer for Marshfield Clinic. So a clinic person would be replacing a clinic person. I've had regular meetings with Pat. He and I agreed about a year ago to meet together. There's been some concern and question about the things between the city and the clinic. There's a tax case out there. And so we've been working on ways that the city could try to cooperate with the clinic. And he's very interested in housing, commercial, residential development, opportunities, amenities that be available for people who might be looking at clinic employment. And I think he's a good choice. So he'll be put forward this coming meeting for consideration. It's a 2 readings sort of thing where the council will see it 1 meeting and then 2 weeks later, they'll get a chance to determine whether they want to vote for Mr. Board.
That would be all right. Certified Sites Program.
I don't have a lot to offer. Karen, do you have any kind of an update? I know that we met back in the middle of September. They're looking at it. Any update? The question, we're getting follow-up questions that we're working on, more information they wanted in areas like water and some other things, technical pieces that they want to make that determination. But it was a great meeting. We toured them out there at the facility, toured them around the whole community. And they seem excited about Marshfield. They seem excited about the site and what could happen on that 120 plus acres. So hopefully we'll be able to achieve that status.
Marshfield Mall.
Signed, sealed, and delivered. The city's part is done. I guess I haven't been out there lately to see what work has been taking hold. I know there have been discussions with some of the staff here about permits for doing some renovation. I believe there have been, at least I know that I've heard contacts were made. I would expect to start seeing a lot happening fairly soon. Their intention is to get rolling and hopefully, get done as early in 2023 as they can. The word is out now what the various retail stores are. I think people are excited about them. And hopefully it'll be the kinds that'll keep them here in Marshfield rather than traveling to Wausau and elsewhere. But it's all full steam ahead from this point.
Daniels, we've talked about that. What else do we need to talk about on that one?
Yeah, I can't really add anything to the report that Ashley gave. I think she did a good job of updating where things are at.
Yes. All right. Any other questions anybody has on that one? Okay. DS Director Recruitment.
Yeah, the Development Services Director, we actually had an interview with somebody today. We'll be looking at possible follow-up on that. That's someone who came to us from GovHR, the recruiting firm that we are using. Beyond that, if for some reason that doesn't lead to somewhere, we will look at other options. There are other recruiting firms around here that we could engage besides the one that we used. We did have a conversation here with this board about, do we look at restructuring in some way? But believe me, Josh Miller's been gone since March. And I think the department feels it and I feel it. We all feel different pieces of it. So, if this doesn't come to pass, we need to have some conversations about where to take things next. But that's the update for now. That we did have another interview and we'll follow up and see if that's someplace we want to go to.
Other activities, anything else happening right now? Thank you.
Can anyone give us update on the commercial development on 600 block of North Central? The Jimmy John's, whatever, what?
I'm not really that involved with what's going on in that particular one. I know what you mean, obviously, but I'm not aware of the current status of that. Go ahead, Natalie.
I do know that we have Ruffin scheduled for next week. It's in progress. I don't have any timeline. They're definitely moving forward. Mhm.
All right, next item on the agenda is discuss economic needs of the community. This is really kind of an open format for what should we be talking about at this particular board, and what should we be moving forward into the to-do list. So when Josh was here, we had a very substantial to-do list, and we narrowed it back to a couple of projects which are all kind of stalling out right now because there's no Josh. Now a lot has happened over the last 6 months. Does the board here see any change in our focus along the way? Obviously, housing is a key issue. Second Street's a key issue. What else should we be looking at as a board? What else should we be moving forward and doing something about? Thoughts? Go ahead, Ken.
Thank you. I know I mentioned this before, but, when Ashley comes up there and she says, well, there's lack of housing. And I know, Ashley, we talked about this in the past, where, even if a house comes on the market for $100,000, it needs probably $100,000 worth of renovations to bring it up to a marketable property. So I know I talked about this, like I said, but housing rehabilitation program or grant program, something to that effect, would be quite helpful in town, because, Ashley knows, most of us know, there's many, many, many homes in Marshfield that are in need of roofs, siding, windows, etc. That's what we can see from the street, okay? Garages, outbuildings, that sort of thing. And I think it's something that's really important, that I think this is something we should really be focusing on, because obviously new construction, like Ashley says, it's kind of priced out right now. It's just hard to do, right? Can you build a $300,000 house, Ashley? Yeah. Are we talking like heat and keys? Yeah. That was an old saying in the car business. But, okay. So, that just gives us some kind of idea, that obviously, even if we would open that subdivision on the east side off of Washington, those homes would still be in the $400,000 range. So, I know Bill and the rest of us kind of struggle. What's the definition of affordable housing? I know that we talked about the financing. Is it possible for people to finance that amount at $40,000 a year job or $60,000 a year job? Yeah, Bill says, yeah, it's possible. There's loan programs where you buy into a higher interest rate and you can get, lesser of a down payment. I understand that. So, but on the flip side, obviously, that's not happening. So, housing rehabilitation program or grant program of some sort. And I know there's money available through the county and for some of this too. And I think that should be really looked into too. And I think it's, I mean, I just don't see much future. Every time we come here, I don't see much future in the new housing market here in Marshfield. I just don't. We just reiterate every meeting the same old thing. 15 houses, 3 at this range, 3 at that range. Well, that's not taking us anywhere at all, you know. So I just think that maybe get a rehabilitation program, get something started, you know, get it in the works. And because I could identify 50 houses in town that would qualify for this, at least maybe 100 for these type of programs. And hopefully people would be attracted to that. You know, if it's a grant program or a matching grant program, or if it's a low interest loan or whatever it may be. But I think it's really something we should really look into. So when these houses come onto the market, they are marketable, not looking at like, oh, the roof's shot, the windows are shot, the foundation is falling in. The furnace is 40 years old. I mean, it's just on and on and on. And Ashley can attest to this too, I'm sure. So that's my thoughts. You know, I'm kind of spilled my guts here tonight, but that's kind of what I've been thinking.
I'd be glad to talk to Jason Grunenberg. He's come to some of these meetings from the county. He does a really good job. He works with Wood County on these types of things. I think we've said that before. We have a program here that sometimes there's money, sometimes there's not, but to help people low to moderate income do things like roof work, siding, you know, some other kind of upgrades on a basically a zero interest loan program is what it comes out to be, that they don't pay back until they move someday or the person passes or whatever. As far as a broader type of program where more monies are being spent to actually help people do improvements to keep the values up, especially if they're not lower income. I don't know how that works, but we can certainly try and find out if there is such a program. But oftentimes those are geared to income guidelines. Not that that's prohibitive to getting stuff done, but we can sure look at it. I'll reach out to Jason and we'll start there.
Thank you. A few things. One, I think, you know, a rehabilitation program is a good idea. But I also think we can't diminish the need for more new construction as well. I think just from talking to people, people obviously want new construction. I think that's a desired need. And so I think we can't diminish that. As Bill said earlier, we need all kinds of homes, and we do need to open up some of those homes, some of those existing homes, so people can move in to some newer homes, and maybe that will provide us some affordable housing. So I think I just wanted to mention that. I think that's something we need to consider. I also want to, under this agenda item, and I've brought this up, I believe, a couple times, but I think we need to also look at downtown housing. I mentioned this at one of the last meetings about downtown housing, and since these meetings are now filmed, someone called me out of the blue, not my constituent, because I don't have Central Avenue, but they heard what I said and they asked me to come and see their apartment. And I walked into their apartment, and I, at points, felt very unsafe in their building. And no one should have to live like that. And so we need to, as a city, begin to address the need to redevelop some of that downtown housing. Some of them are very good, and I know that, so I'm not saying the whole downtown, but I think there are pockets where we need to have a conversation about how do we incentivize, if we have to, some redevelopment of those rentals above the commercial spaces on Central, because just the one that I walked into, again, I was mortified. So I think that needs to be a future conversation at some point. Thank you.
Kaylee?
Thanks for doing that, Adam. I'm sure that was a good experience, at least educationally. So downtown, we have a lot of units, like we've said before, that are just not even units, I would say. They haven't been inhabited since the 70s. So there's a lot of development potential right now, but of course it's very, very expensive to get everything up to that point. And I think there's enough new members on here that maybe you're not familiar with the addition that was made to the facade grant program a couple years ago. And that was actually the same 50-50 for residential conversion in upper level units, as well as restaurants in lower level units, to just help cut with some of those costs. If there's anything else creatively that you would like to add to that, I'm sure that would be a really, really great addition to downtown. I know some people who own their buildings have a business downstairs and they're focused on their business and they already own their buildings. So there's really no reason for them to be a landlord in addition to what they're already doing. So they'd really have to have a really good reason to add that up on top. One other thing that we are doing right now in our Economic Vitality Committee is putting together a residential video to just go into some of the units that are some of our nicer units, to start changing that perception that all downtown units that are in existence are bad units. We have some really, really caring property owners who are really trying to upgrade units every single time someone moves out, kind of refurbish a little bit, get that rent just a little bit higher. And the demand is definitely increasing. I know Howard's have mentioned that the Charles Apartments now, their clientele is shifting so much that the parking lot is filling up with more cars because more people now own cars that are in those units. So it's just kind of interesting how we're already seeing that crowding. When the video comes out, we're playing with the idea of showing some of those vacant spaces and seeing if it's a good kind of reality check to show both the potential and also the really, really great things that are happening downtown. So if you have any feedback for us on that, we're definitely all ears.
The general concept of getting people to live downtown is they will spend more money in downtown to start with. The rising tide raises all boats. So obviously, converting some of those empty spaces would be a positive for the area. Certainly would help with the demand characteristics dealing with along the way. So we've had it's 40,000 available for matching availability through the facade program, and yet we really haven't seen anybody take our money yet, have we? So what do you think the problem is? Now I made you walk all the way back.
I think some of the people that would be ambitious enough to take advantage of it can just finish some other really ambitious projects, honestly. I have some in mind that would definitely want to do that in the future. They're just not quite ready. I think Off the Mat is a very good example of that, where they have 2 units above. They put a staircase in the business for entry, where there previously was no access to the upper level. So that's their intention in the future. But of course, they're busy right now with the business move. So, and there's probably just a lack of awareness.
So you mentioned parking with the Charles Street. So is parking a general concern for the apartment owners downtown or not?
It's so it's a very complicated question. I think as we start incentivizing some other things that we want to see downtown and developing Second Street, it will become a problem. And current parking studies show that there's ample space right now. But if you think about some of the directions that we want to go, for example, one thing that we're working on is trying to create more of a pedestrian access and bike access to the back parking lot so that people are entering through the rear businesses, and thinking about ways that we can utilize the back spaces for things like back patios for restaurants and just better access as that second entrance. If we were to do that, property owners that are currently parking in that little slab right behind their door would be moving into public lots. Right now, we have a lot of property owners and employees who are moving their cars throughout the day. That's just kind of the culture of downtown right now. And so we need to take a look at our parking, our permitting, and our strategy, especially as we move forward with Second Street, because if it's not a problem right now, I think it will be around the corner.
Okay, so are there easy answers for that, or?
No.
No? Okay.
I mean, you think about a few years ago, there was a proposal for the Milwaukee lot, and that was going to be something that was going to be taken for a residential potential complex. But employees were using that lot pretty heavily right now. I think it was at that point the only free lot in town that was free all day. You think about the locations that we have that are available for parking lots, and I can honestly think of one that doesn't have like a building on it. So it would take some strategic planning.
Other question?
The comment, Kayla and I have had this conversation a couple times as far as the remodeling of apartments downtown and why it's not happening. There are a fair amount of downtown business or building owners that have owned those properties for 40, 50 years. They themselves may be in their 80s. So the likelihood of an 80-year-old coming through and rehabbing that building is probably not that great. So until we can get to that stage where some of those owners might be interested in selling, I think we might be stuck with those not being remodeled.
So you don't foresee a incentive program that would get them paid? I mean, I thought, first off, $40,000 of free money would be good incentive to help people add additional units in the downtown, and yet so far I've been kind of underwhelmed by the amount of people that have taken advantage.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of people that made updates for their residential apartments before that was the case. So I think the ones that are left, like I said, I don't know if it's a situation where those landlords, I mean, they're full, their tenants are full, those are probably more of those lower price points that we were talking about as far as $325, $425. And if they've owned them for that long, I mean, they're just kind of sitting there in their use, but they might probably not get changed until they change ownership.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Questions, concerns, ideas, additional thoughts on the economic needs of the community? Anything from out there? All right. Economic development activities. So, Matt, you want to start today?
Thanks, Bill. Yeah, again, Matt McLean, Visit Marshfield. First, I would like to thank a bunch of people in this room that helped with Maple Fall Fest. So it seems like it was like a week ago. It was almost a month ago. It's about 3 weeks ago. But just Gabby was there with her beautiful food truck. Natalie helped volunteer, raise some money for the Silver Laces group. Let's see, Mike helped check the electrical before we got there, so the power worked. Nikki volunteered. Justin helped out. Kaylee helped me get the word out for volunteering. I saw Steve there. I know Ed was there because his house is across the street. And so if I forgot anybody, but thank you. It really took in. And Lois, I can't forget Lois. Lois volunteered and did a great job helping. So thank you. And this was the first year I didn't really have, I'm struggling getting staff. I had a commuter working for me for a few months, and she got a job that she didn't have to commute for. So I'm still got a job posted. You even know anybody? So again, no, Maple Fall Fest went really well. We had about 20 more vendors than we did the previous year, and vendors did really well. We were blessed with great weather. So again, Maple Fall Fest was great. And then we do turn around those funds back into community grants. So that's the main goal of any proceeds from Fall Fest. They go into community grants for tourism-related activities, events, businesses. Such as that. A couple other things that we have in the works here is actually Justin and I went out to Jurassic Park just a couple of days ago. We're taking an inventory of all the sculptures. So kind of that progress of making headway. So when Clyde's ready to say, hey, I want to hang up the tour guide hat, that we can move some on that possible move down to the Wildwood Park area. So we're trying to set the foundation there. It was, I think I got about 20 pages of notes I'm trying to put in a spreadsheet of what the sculpture is, what it's called, when it was created, how big it is. And I guess some of the sculptures weigh about 5,000 pounds. One of the biggest ones I think was 40 feet tall by 30 feet. So a lot of these things will be pretty interesting to move, I think. Other big thing on the plate is the visitor guide right now. Our ad sales are going well, and we're developing and creating content. I have a few partners helping me with that. Let's see. One other thing with Maple Fall Fest. I'm going to talk to the council next week about it too. We did meet with Everett and Pete with the fire department, and we changed a few things. The breakfast group that's run by Columbus and Columbus Football and Cheer use as our main fundraiser. We kind of cooked underneath a structure that was called Shelter One, and then they moved the food across to a tent. We basically, they said it wasn't safe to cook under the tents, and so we had to make a change there. But it actually, I think, kind of a little bit of logistics were challenging, but it actually, I even worked good. So it was kind of like, oh no, it's gonna be a big change, but it actually worked out pretty good. Some other things going on. I'm working on a 2023 business plan. We're also going to be undertaking some strategic planning. Got a few dates in November, and so I'll be kind of putting the word out to different partners. If you would like to be involved in a strategic planning process, we're definitely open to having partners and people involved in that. Again, as we go through the strategic planning process and also the business plan for Visit Marshall, we're going to be looking at those EDB goals that we currently had about 9 of those that we aligned with. I'd met with Stephen Lois and kind of talked about some of those things. And then also too, we got talking more about the Winter Sports Complex. I'll be talking a little bit about that at council, maybe at the Common Council meeting, and maybe a few next steps of how we can help that group and work to try to make that a reality. I think that is most of the stuff for a brief update. Any questions for me?
Question? Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
So Kaylee's been getting lots of exercise. I'll work from that side of the room over.
I think what I said about housing before, I absolutely agree with Ashley, by the way, as far as we just need some of them to sell to some new owners and some of the ones that don't have anything going on upstairs. Hell Week, we have, I think, more participation from businesses as far as fall window display, holiday window display, and our pumpkin promenade, which is essentially a luminary hike with jack-o'-lanterns downtown during the third Thursday, October 20th. More participation than ever. Businesses are really, really jumping into our promotions right now, and that's been really, really fun to see. And it's been a great business mix as well. As far as building development goes, I know that the projects that people tend to wonder about, the Muscle and Fitness building, the PSE building that's going to be called the Upham building where Dave's Guitars is going. And all I can say is the timeline is slower than expected. There's definitely still people behind the scenes moving those things forward. Dave's Guitars, I think, is still set to be finished this year, unless I'm wrong about that, or there's new updates. But Muscle and Fitness just running into kind of hiccup after hiccup. But there is definitely conversations constantly happening around that building, and hopefully we'll see some changes in that soon. The Vibrant Places grant was released to the WEDC. If anyone saw that recently, it's about placemaking. So taking a place that's not really a place, like an alley, vacant lot, a really underutilized park, non-commercial space, you can apply for a grant through WEDC, and you have to have matching funds available, and it has to be done through the municipality. And it's basically just making a transformation of an area. So you think about, we really want those bathrooms in Winslow Family Plaza. It would have to be something like that, but we had transformation of the entire space. So if we were going to pitch something like that, it'd have to be that, plus crazy string lights and like a sculpture garden and some other things. This is not in the works, by the way. It's just, you have to think about a place that is underutilized and then come up with a transformation for that. Been talking with Parks and Rec about that a little bit, nothing formally, but if you can think of a place even that's not downtown anywhere in the city, it's worth looking on the website. Get your wheels spinning about some potential for Marshfield there. There's 30 spots available. I'll leave it with that today.
Great. Thank you. Do you have anything for us today?
Thank you, Bill. Justin's going to be handing out a map here. We do have some updates on the Winslow Family Plaza bathroom. As many of you may know, we did move that up to the 2023 CIP plan. So there's been a lot of discussions on where we can put the bathrooms at the Winslow Family Plaza. And if you look at the map, I have the map. It is we've looked at multiple areas around the plaza, what's going to work, the buildings, where the streets are. And we ultimately came up with a space behind the pergola on the north side. Right now, if you see the red triangle or rectangle, that's where we're looking at right now. Why we chose this spot right now, it's underutilized. It is, there is basically just, it's just basically a dead space between the sidewalk and the pergola. We did measure it this last week, and there should be enough space to put 2 bathrooms on either side, which would be family bathrooms, and then a middle space to house utilities, and then hopefully extra storage for the plaza. As you may know, we only have storage on the stage currently. All of my other things are kind of scattered between the Parks and Rec buildings. So to have actual on-site storage is really important for the plaza. So that north side behind the pergola is where we're looking. Is there any questions that we could answer?
That's obviously heated space? Is it going to be heated year-round?
Right. What space?
It's heated space?
Yeah, it would be a bathroom as we have in our other parks, and Justin can speak on the.
The facility won't be open year-round, but it'll be heated year-round and be available to be open for different events or activities. So it won't be like open 24 or during normal park hours, but if we have a demand or specific times, we'll be able to open it. We found heating our facilities, not us, like we discovered something, but in Wisconsin, you're better off to heat your facilities rather than just letting them get deep freeze and then have to deal with the ramifications of everything freezing. So it's better to keep them at 45, 50 degrees rather than letting them freeze. So yes, to answer your
So
question.
clearly, these bathrooms are meant for day-to-day use, not for events. Events still would require porta potties?
Yeah, depending on the size of the event, you would probably have to use porta potties. You know, some of our events, you'll probably have to have porta potties spread throughout the area, whether it's 2nd Street or 3rd Street or throughout the plaza.
What is that tipping? When do you?
I think the event organizers usually know what they'll need or what they want, and it's usually complaint driven. So like there wasn't enough, and then you'll know you'll need to add more for your event next year.
Mm-hmm.
I just what everyone knows, sorry, we're taking this to the Park Rec Forestry for kind of approval. Then we'll take it to probably board for approval, and then hire some sort of consultant to design them with the integrity and design that's already been put in place by EDB with the plaza. And so using that red brick theme with some line coloring, and then get that approved by the Plan Commission, as well as the various other bodies. Hopefully get it bid out in early part of 23, and hopefully start construction as soon as we can, and get it completed as soon as we can. Ideally by 4th of July would be nice. So it just depends on the construction schedule and the lead time on some products.
Yeah, oh, go ahead, Adam.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, to speak to the events, depending on when we have like, I would say Dairy Fest, Hub City Days, obviously we're gonna need more Porta Johns in the plaza. I think that, well, actually I hope that we could maybe need more bathrooms for the Hub City Concert Series as that grows. But hopefully with these bathrooms, we would only need extra ones for those bigger festivals. And we've had a lot of complaints, even with the Porta Johns this last year, and we've brought in 2. So you can about imagine all of the activities, even the passive activities, the use of the splash pad, all those families that come in, it really does. It needs to be emptied out weekly. Both of them do. So this would be a huge benefit for the plaza.
All right. I apologize if you said this, but I didn't catch it. How many like toilets will you have?
So we would have 2 on each side, 1 toilet each, 1 sink. So 2 total, essentially. And 2 urinals.
Okay.
So it would be a family, both units would be a family bathroom, essentially.
So I would assume one of the uses of this facility is for people whose kids get wet. and changing into dry clothes. Is any thought given to maybe a separate area just for that?
We haven't thought about a separate area, but that's something we can look
I mean,
into
that's
as well.
relatively inexpensive space, I would expect, compared to a normal bathroom.
Correct.
So,
We designed our pool, family changing rooms with that aspect, so
Yeah.
we added benches in there, so you can kind of get your feet off the ground and get dried off as best you can, whether you got to change a little one or something like that. So that'll be taken into consideration of the design as the users of the splash pad.
excellent.
And as Keely mentioned, there are grant opportunities. There are a couple. With that grant opportunity, we will have to be a bit creative. We don't want to just ask. There's points to the grant that you need to hit. And just bathrooms, I don't think we would be very competitive with just that. So if we do apply for that grant for the bathrooms, which we're not sure that that's going to be the case. We'll have to be creative on how we bring that into the Second Street corridor project as well, because obviously we'd have a better chance bringing up the fact that we have plans for Second Street corridor with the plaza being in there. So something we were all looking into. Any other questions on the bathrooms?
Good.
Just curious on that bathroom issue. The 2 stalls per side is not really going to put a big dent in a lot of these events, I'm thinking. But has there been any consideration given to using an area where we could expand those or size things so that in the future the accommodations could be made to add additional bathrooms or enlarge the ones that are in there? It ultimately, the 2 stalls on each side it'll be nice for the families during a typical day or something, but I just don't see it offsetting all these porta potties and the people that are frustrated with them constantly. So just question, I guess.
Yeah, I think that for having 2 permanent bathrooms will make a big difference. I agree, though, for our bigger events, we'll need to bring in porta johns. We still have to do that at, Wildwood, even though we have multiple facilities for Maple Fall Fest. I don't think that's going to change because we don't know, the size of the event. So I do think that even having the 2 permanent ones will help greatly. As far as expanding, that space probably has enough room to do more. But with what we have with the plaza, there's not a lot of space in the plaza that isn't utilized. And so that's one of our biggest challenges is we only have so much space between where the stage is, the common area, and the splash pad. So to find a space to put multiple units is kind of hard to come by. We've looked at even other properties along the plaza. There's just no good option for that. We don't want to cross the road because that could be, a liability or hazard. We don't really want people crossing the road to have to utilize the facilities. So space is the issue when it comes to bathrooms, but I think that this is the best option for us right now. It's not taking away from our usage of the plaza. But that's a good question.
Ed Wagner's hand.
Ed?
I'd like to remind the board that on the first cut of the West Second Street Design Program, there was a great discussion about taking the Baltus waiting room and I guess it was their parts room also, and the bathrooms over there. And basically, you don't have to worry about the expansion in the future because you could always have that. The city owns that building now. You should probably look into the cost of renovating that as well as this option too, and see how it works. We understand the concern about crossing the streets. I think you'd have to maybe talk to the engineering department to see if they could find some traffic control devices. But I think this might be another step toward that, another piece of the Second Street project at the same time. So that's I just wanted to remind you that there was that option in the layout.
Okay. Other question? What else? Anything else?
Yeah, just wanted to give an update on how the summer went. I would say it went very, very well. And we are now starting to open up sponsorships for next year, already looking at bands for the Hub City Concert Series. So in the next couple of weeks, I'll be sending out sponsorship letters. We'd like to see that number grow because we do want to build the program and keep bringing in bigger acts. We did have a couple acts that were very, sizable and popular. So we want to keep adding those to the roster. And to do that, we absolutely need that sponsorship, and it is absolutely appreciated that the businesses are seeing the return in investment on the Hub City Concert Series. We do have fall activities coming up. We always partner with Main Street Marshfield on Halloween Week. And in the past, we only had things in the plaza, such as pumpkin painting, things of that sort. But we are adding another luminary hike to Weber Park to just bring, more activity to our parks. They did so well during Cabin Fever Fest that I think that a fall one would be really, really fun. So that is on the agenda for October, as well as a spooky zoo tour at the zoo. So we're just making Halloween Week bigger, and appreciate, the partnership with Main Street Marshfield on that. And they have a lot of events as well. So it's going to be a busy, fun week. As we look forward, we definitely we'll be doing things for the holidays and Small Business Saturday. We decided to move our event that we normally have in December, our Reindeer Day, to Small Business Saturday, just to help out with the businesses and to create just more foot traffic downtown. So looking forward to that, along with the ice skating rink, that will be also back to the plaza this winter. So a lot happening still.
I'm reaching back into my memory now. We had a consultant come in and originally before we did the plaza and pitched the concept, and he talked about the number of events per year at the plaza. Do we track that?
I do.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So is it a big number or a small number? Or?
When I was first hired, I believe the number was between 11 and 14 events per year. And obviously 2020 slowed that down a little bit, but just the concert series alone is 14. So that's not counting all of the events that happen for like other organizations that come in and rent the plaza now that it's rentable. So we are probably 14 to 20 events per year. And now that I'm trying to make it a full year plaza.
When they counted events, they counted like smaller things, like, if somebody came and did personal performances or something there. So do you include those types, or are those events happening, or?
They are happening. In that count, I normally don't. I do know that number, but I don't normally add it into my count. It's usually what we program.
So really the way
city.
I look at that is anything that would attract people to the
Right.
plaza.
Mhm.
And in my mind, that would be something that would be impactful for the community to know.
Absolutely.
How many of those events are drawing people to the downtown. In my travels around the world, I see lots of interesting things that really every time I see them, I get excited because, that's something we could do here,
I do too.
Yeah, so I take pictures and leave them on my phone, and so along the way though, it was, I could see there's still a lot of potential for those small events, that anything that draws people to the downtown.
There is so much potential. And a lot of great ideas that hopefully will come to fruition. Now that we're getting past the pandemic, it's easier to see what we can do. Oh.
Do you guys track guest count or attendee count? I know just from my own experience that it's definitely been up this year at the Hub City Concert. But I didn't know if you guys had tracked that or not.
We do track it. It's a little difficult to sometimes track it, but all the events that I'm at, I do a head count throughout the day. And so for the Hub City Concert Series, we average between 200 and 300 people, which is significantly up from the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Excellent. Right. Any other questions? Comments? All right, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Karen?
Okay, just a couple updates. We talked about the bounce back grants that were available. There's been additional funds put into those. Definitely should last throughout the year, and that's where you can get a $10,000 grant to go into a vacant building. I did get a count in the 10-county region area that regional planning controls. There have been 445 bounce back grants, and Wood County had 54 of those. I think that's pretty good because a lot of those are new businesses or expanding businesses. So they'll continue to track that. I don't know how many of you are familiar with or hear a lot about Synergy. It's kind of our regional group in central Wisconsin. They do have a new director. She is starting today, and it's actually Angel Whitehead, if anybody knew her from the Wisconsin Rapids Chamber. Really excited to have her coming on board because I think you're going to see this group become more active in economic development, and we really do need that. Some of the things that they work on are Central Wisconsin Days, so they're taking issues down to Madison that are important to our area. They did this past year, which went over really well, was a developer tour. And they toured Stevens Point area and Wausau. And next year they're slated to tour Wisconsin Rapids and Marshfield. And out of that, we did have a developer that is looking at some things in Marshfield, even though we weren't part of the tour, just in some discussions. They're also placing a lot of effort on workforce. So I'll continue to update you guys as more things are happening. But again, I'm really excited about that. I'm also participating in a child care task force group that's been formulated in Wisconsin Rapids, but it's for all of Wood County. And they're looking at a multifaceted approach to how we can help with the child care issue. And it's everything from helping new business to start in that area to getting new staffing for that area, as well as helping families to be able to afford it and maybe businesses to help supplement that. So watch for more to come on that. Jason Grunberg is very, very involved in that participation. Next week, Friday, Wood County will be doing a bus tour in the area of economic development activities, and one of their stops will be the Makerspace. So that's going to be happening next Friday at 1:30. And while the Makerspace isn't quite complete, it's really coming along. Some of their funds were used to develop the space and get it prepared. EDB also put some funding in place for that. So our intent is this will be kind of a trial run. But then if not by the end of October, certainly in November, we'll have some open houses where we'll invite folks to come, see the progress, maybe see some of the kids actually using the space and some of the schools and curriculum that's being developed. And then lastly, I want to put a shout out. Tonight is our Firm of the Year event, and we are celebrating prevention genetics. So we're very excited about that. Hope to see some of you there. So any questions? Thank you.
Nick, do you have anything? Nothing good today? Mary? Anything you want to talk about? Anybody else? 'Cause otherwise, I think we're pretty close to the end of the trail here, so. All right, suggestions for future agenda items? Boy, that's a really quiet crowd, so go ahead, Ann.
This doesn't have to be the next meeting, but I was really glad to hear, Kayla, you talk about the downtown, but I would like to maybe have you come and discuss that with us more and see if there's ways to come alongside Main Street Marshall in some capacity to try to help with this issue.
I concur. All right. Next meeting is November 3rd. I will come out of the cabin from deer hunting to be at that meeting. So I've looked at my schedule already. So any conflicts, any issues anybody has immediately? Otherwise, I think I just saw, Adam raised his hand to adjourn, and sure, get around. I want to thank all the people that did presentations. I actually really appreciate your information today. This was really interesting. So give me some ideas for going forward. So thanks everybody for coming.